On March 15th, I want you to stick your head out the window and shout, "I am not a consumer, I am a human being."
There's a chance coming up for you to take a stand.
It's called Shutdown315, and it won't be over in a day.
We'll learn more about it next.
When there's something wrong on your planet, who are you going to call?
Calling. Call the GrowthBusters. Whoa.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the GrowthBusters podcast, where we'll discuss Shutdown315.
If you suffer from moderate to severe growth mania, this podcast could be right for you.
Or if you're suffering under the tyranny of growth, you're in the right place.
That's right. The common man and woman are being saddled with the costs of growth, while growth profiteers multiply their wealth and decimate the planet.
I'm Stephanie Gardner, environmental law and policy fanatic and sustainable energy pro.
And I'm Dave Gardner, director of the documentary GrowthBusters, Hooked on Growth. Beautiful lives on a healthy planet is what we're after. Give us a hand.
Later in the podcast, we'll also launch our new GrowthBusters book club and announce our first book selection.
So stick around. We'll also briefly discuss an interesting Oscar acceptance speech.
Before we get into Shutdown315, I want to invite all of our listeners to take the GrowthBusters survey. It's an opportunity for you to let us know how we're doing and how we can better help you to work toward beautiful lives on a healthy planet.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this, Stephanie. We launched in mid-February, and we've gotten a good response so far, but the survey is still open. We'll put a link in the show notes. It only takes a minute or two. Just head to growthbusters.org/survey. Or see the show notes for the link.
Okay, Dad, tell me what you've learned about Shutdown315.
Well, it starts this Saturday, March 15th, and it will last a while. There's a Newsweek story. What is Shutdown315? Nationwide plan to shut down USA for one day, which is an inaccurate headline, and it described the shutdown this way. Shutdown315 is calling for Americans to stop making purchases from major corporations, end social media use, and even not come to work on March 15th as a way to fight back against a broken system. That's a lousy description because it makes it sound like it's for one day. But otherwise, it sort of captures the essence of it. And on the Shutdown315 homepage, it says, "Take part in protests and sit-ins that demand a government that prioritizes the needs of its citizens over the interests of corporations and their billionaire CEOs. We share the common goal of mobilizing our collective economic power to starve the oligarchy of our labor and resources."
Wow, so how did you learn about this or come across this?
I just first learned about it a week ago from Matt Orsog's Degrowth is the Answer column on Substack. I'll put a link in the show notes to that particular column, also to the Newsweek story, even though it's a little inaccurate, and to the Shutdown315 website, which is really easy to remember, shutdown315.org. The movement declares that it is nonpartisan. It will be a massive general strike withdrawing support from a broken system that enriches the few and disregards the people. The Shutdown315 manifesto is worth reading. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to quote a part of it. "Do you really think we're so dependent on you that we can't go without? Your social media, your AI, your productivity tools, they are designed to serve you. We will serve you no longer. Starting today, we the people will boycott all platforms associated with those individuals seen standing behind the president on Inauguration Day and all those who associate with them. What you fail to realize is all the services you offer come at a cost and are ultimately nothing more than a luxury. We can and will unplug. We will find ethical alternatives. Instead of Facebook, we'll choose Blue Sky. Instead of Amazon, we will shop locally. Instead of Google, we will use DuckDuckGo. We will forgo sporting events and betting. The devices you sell us are ours. The data you mine is ours, and the cost of these conveniences is too steep. We banish you from our economy until you respect our privacy, stop mining and selling our data, and stop undermining our interests with your army of lobbyists and lawyers." So it's pretty clear this shutdown is about starving the oligarchs and powerful corporations of their revenue streams. Now, it is not specifically about scaling back the size of our economy and reorganizing it in a sustainable way, which is something you and I talk about frequently, Stephanie. But coincidentally, many of the actions proposed do shrink our overconsumption footprint. So I thought it would make good sense for us to explore that on this episode. To help clarify what they're doing, I did chat with a couple of organizers, Chet and Bones. They serve as moderators in the chats on Telegram and Signal, which the Shutdown315 movement is using instead of Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Let me share a little bit from that conversation. Let's jump into it. What is Shutdown315?
Shutdown315 is a shutdown that starts on March 15th. It includes boycotting of the monopoly of corporations that have misguided us into thinking that we have free choice, but it's all somewhat owned by the same people, the 1% of people, right? And it's basically the voice of the people saying that the system is broken and that we need to get the billionaires and 1%ers out of the government. So that involves boycotting, a lot of things like Walmart and Target, things like that, but also really focusing on supporting local businesses. And one of my main jobs is trying to teach people how to get involved in mutual aid and building your community, which kind of goes hand in hand with what you're doing. And it's about sharing resources so we're not over consuming and switching the mindset from hyper individualism that we've been taught to a more community-based life.
If it's okay, Dave, I'll actually read something that one of the OG founding people, because I messaged her and said, I'll be talking on this thing tonight. Is there any, talking points you want me to emphasize, right? I would say that our goal is not only to boycott major corporations and bring attention to the wealth and power imbalance between the working class and the ruling class, but that we also aim to show people that they hold power in their labor, and that if the American working class can make this realization, then we, as the working class, can take back our power from the hands of oligarchs and fascists. We're working in partnership with General Strike US to help them meet their 11 million, 3.5% of the population goal to carry out a massive general strike. In addition to these two major objectives, we also aim to help teach people how to be self-sufficient and rely on community rather than individualism and the capitalist supply chain and labor transactional societal system we currently have. We aim to help people learn lost and highly important skills like small-scale agriculture, companion planting, cooking, baking, fishing, hunting, foraging, and connecting with the land. We are incorporating indigenous knowledge and regard for the land and water and how we forge relationships with one another. Our survival and the survival and well-being of the planet depends on valuing indigenous knowledge and land stewardship.
This is really cool. I really like the idea behind it, that transfer of power, that transfer of wealth, almost like starving the current economic system that really just skyrockets all the wealth to the top. It's basically taking back control of where you're getting your basic necessities, scaling back what you are using and taking from the economy we have today. So I'm glad that you found this and that you saw those connections to, the degrowth movement and what we talk a lot about on the GrowthBusters podcast. And Chet and Bones really articulated this really well. I read through the 315 website and there's a lot of great stuff, but they really kind of made it more personal, right? And helped imbibe this with that feeling of autonomy, not necessarily autonomy, but just taking back that control that we've basically handed over to these few big corporations.
Maybe the word you're thinking of is agency.
Agency, yes.
I've been talking till I'm blue in the face, trying to emphasize that we have agency. There's so many people who have been unhappy with the way things are going, but they are sitting on their hands waiting for the system to change. And many argue against individual action. They do not think that individual action is important, that we need the masses to make changes. Well, the way to get the system to change is for us to vote with our pocketbooks, vote with our attention, vote with our behavior. Every individual one of us has the power to do that. And so I just love those words that they use to describe that.
Yeah, super powerful stuff.
I asked them to give us a little bit more detail. Let me share that with you.
The movement itself begins March 15th and continues until our demands are met. And it involves the boycotts. It involves labor strikes when feasible. And everyone has to make that decision for themselves, I guess, what they're willing to risk and what supports they can avail themselves of. But the more we encourage community-based efforts, the more people will have the supports they need and won't be as afraid to go without. You have spoken, at least on the episode that I listened to, about community organizing, stuff like that. And Bones is very much interested in that and engaged in that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the behavior requested and recommended sounds a lot like the behavior that I hoped to promote with the Bright Future Project that was part of my presidential campaign. It's a recipe for post-growth living.
Yeah, and I don't think that the clip from Chet really goes into some of the more actionable details that some of our listeners might now be really curious about. You can definitely go to the shutdown315.org website, and I know there's a lot of other resources like on Reddit and such. You know, some of the other actions that people can take include, removing money from banks and corporate financial institutions and putting them more into local credit unions, cancel all of your subscriptions from the big streaming services like Amazon and Netflix. If you have the option, stop working and find alternative ways to serve your community without providing the ruling class labor. I'm kind of quoting from a post in the Reddit group. Stop buying and ordering anything online. Support your local businesses. Stop traveling. Buy food from local farms. So you can kind of start to see the overlap with what you're describing, Dad, about the degrowth movement and more sustainable, low impact living. And then what I really appreciate about this is that it paints this picture of how we can ensure that our community members are taken care of, right? Like that's where the mutual aid comes in. Build and strengthen your community. If you have more resources and someone else is taking the major step of stopping working, can you help provide for them? That kind of thing. And really start to build our communities back from the ground up.
Yeah, we talk a lot about the fact that, the scale of the human enterprise has outgrown the planet. And so we've got to shrink the economy and the population. Well, shrinking the economy, people are afraid of that. They're afraid their needs won't be met. Chet alluded to that here. He's not talking about a permanent shrinking of the economy, not per se. He's talking about, people are going to be afraid to take part in Shutdown 315, and we're wanting to overcome those fears by providing some good ways for them to make sure that their needs are met, like you were talking about. But those are the way we will need to be meeting our needs long-term, post-growth, if we shrink the economy. We will all be working less. What we've been talking about doing on a permanent basis goes hand in hand with what they're talking about, which almost sounds like it's on a temporary basis during the strike. I was curious, so I wanted to ask them about that. Does the movement, do the organizers, do you too envision this mutual aid, the opposite of individualism, all of this community-based meeting of needs as a temporary effort just to help everyone survive the strike, and then we're going back to something more like, life before we realized that the oligarchs had taken over?
I think that's a great question. I don't think so. Honestly, right now, I think that the shutdown is finding its footing a little bit in relation to mutual aid. We're trying to help as many people as we can. But with that said, I'm now getting involved in my local mutual aids and things like that. And a lot of the work that needs to be done has already been done. So we're more moving people to get involved in their community and see what's out there because a lot of it is already done. My personal goal is to make it more of a lifelong thing. This is something that I want for my children in their future. I think mutual aid is a lifelong thing. And I think a lot of teaching mutual aid and stuff that I'm trying to get out there is how it's different than charity work and how it's a lifestyle and not just something where you can show up to the soup kitchen, every Thanksgiving and feel like you've done your part to give back. It's about like people helping each other. It's a whole different mindset change of how we're living. Honestly, it's like, if you look into it, this hyper individualism is a big reason why people are having mental health issues, drug issues, all these different things. And it's because, we don't have a community. It goes against capitalistic structure to have everybody share our resources, right? Instead of over consuming.
Yep. Chet, anything to add?
Yeah, just we can take some big swings and hopefully people see that another world is possible, that there are other ways to have our needs met than punching a clock and taking care of everything ourselves. It's just every family for themselves or every individual for themselves, however big your network is. Everyone is disconnected. And I live in a friendly place, and yet I don't know my neighbors' names. I've lived in my apartment for 2 years. This is just the norm now. And since the 1950s, 1960s, real wages have stagnated or lost pace with inflation. So people are getting squeezed harder and harder and harder. And I think that limits our field of vision because we're just thinking an hour ahead, a day ahead. How do I get to the end of the month? How do I make ends meet? And the thought of volunteering some time, right? And even that, I'm sure that terminology is problematic, but even the thought of unpaid labor is just like, are you kidding? Who can do that? I have 2 jobs just to keep the lights on, and they're flickering at that.
I'm just so impressed with how smart these 2 people are.
Yeah.
And articulate.
Yeah, me too. I love Bones's comment, sharing resources instead of individual overconsumption, and how that is basically anti-capitalist, right? But that sounds great to me. Why not share resources and build your community through that sharing?
These ideas are pretty shocking, I'm sure, to a lot of members of our society.
Yeah.
Who just haven't thought about this before and don't realize that we are deep into ecological overshoot and we've got to find a way. We cannot keep on behaving the way we've been behaving. And so these are the ways, these are the answers to the dramatic shift that we have to make to curb our overconsumption and shrink our economy instead of trying to grow it forever on a finite planet. So I was glad to hear that they're quite clear about this being a lifestyle change and that she hopes to raise her children in this way. If you have an open mind, it sounds like a pretty beautiful way to live. Imagine knowing your neighbors and helping each other and depending on each other.
What a concept.
Yeah. But some people are going to say, well, it sounds a lot like socialism. Well, it sounds a lot like fun. It sounds a lot like friendship. It sounds a lot like community. Let's not get hung up on the label and why, for some reason, you think that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I've never really gotten why people react so strongly to socialism. I was looking at the demand list. Chet mentioned that they're going to keep the shutdown going until their demands are met. And, a few of the high-level important ones on their demand list include economic justice for all, which means a fair economy that works for the many, not just for the few, healthcare for all, so universal healthcare, education reform that values students and teachers over profits, justice system reform, civil rights, environmental action, accessible housing, the list goes on. And yeah, some of those things sound like socialism, but I think what we're all kind of coming to terms with right now as Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security are coming under scrutiny and threat in a real way is, those are social programs, right? Like, I don't know if people would go so far as to call those socialist things, but they are, right? Yeah. They're taking care, they're pooling resources and making sure people don't fall through the cracks. And people rely on those programs lots of people that would be shocked to think of themselves as socialists rely on those programs, but they just don't seem to really understand what socialism means.
But I'll tell you what, in the future world, if we're not going to live in a Mad Max kind of world, we're going to be living in a world where we're all working less and the economy is contracting, and they're describing the way we will make it a beautiful thing. So more power to them. Now, here again, I was exploring and probing, trying to find how much overlap there is between the recipe for a post-growth world that we're talking about all the time and the way of living that they're describing and recommending in Shutdown 315. So I asked what I think is an important question. You know, a couple of the parts of the post-growth life that I've been promoting are, working less, for one, and certainly consuming less and finding better ways to have our needs met where we're not wasting so much and we're certainly not depending on the big corporations. And Bones, I hear you saying you're envisioning that as a lifestyle change, but I'm guessing that most people who, so far anyway, who are attracted to Shutdown 315 aren't thinking of this as a way to get us out of ecological overshoot.
It would almost come along for the ride.
Maybe they don't understand that verbiage, but I do know that a lot of people share the worry that we're harming the planet. A lot of people, that's like a main concern to them. But I wouldn't say that they're hyper-focused on it, no.
So I see this as an opportunity. If this gathers a lot of support, there are going to be a lot of people plugged in and learning what Bones is trying to plug them into. And I think, hopefully, without any help, they're going to start to recognize, wow, this is all right. This beats the heck out of being on the treadmill in service to the man. Here's the alternative. It's unplugging from that more mantra.
Yeah, maybe this is a great on-ramp to the GrowthBusters mentality. And I think connecting the dots between capitalism and planetary destruction is a really good first step. I think people are understanding that this economic structure doesn't care at all about the environment, and we all live in the environment, right? And so as we see the tech oligarchy siding with the current presidential administration and basically signing on to all of these decisions around where we're going to get our energy and cutting down trees in our national parks and all of these things, people are really starting to connect the dots that capitalism doesn't care what kind of environment we live in.
Is it capitalism or is it capitalism as we currently practice it?
I think capitalism inherently is that way.
Darn.
Unfortunately, I think we need a new economic system, right? I know you agree.
Probably, but I know there are a lot of people who are just really, that's a real tough hurdle to get over, is the idea of giving up on capitalism. And so I try to be open-minded that, well, maybe there is a form of capitalism that we haven't explored yet that could, take really good care of the planet and the people. But it would definitely be a lot different than what we've been witnessing so far.
I don't know. I feel like you've debunked that idea over and over again on the podcast, right? Like
probably, yeah.
Like capitalism fundamentally relies on infinite growth, right? Like we need a different economic model, whether that's steady state or something else, right? But to me, capitalism is it's hard to unwind it from infinite growth.
Seems that way. So remember, Shutdown 315 starts on March 15th, but it is not going to be over in a day.
Unlike kind of a Buy Nothing Day, unlike February 28th, this begins on March 15th and it continues until we get the change that we are fighting for.
And I would dare say it just continues. Even after we get the change, it is the change in so many ways.
Yes, it is the change. Well said. So, Dad, what are you going to do for the shutdown?
I was hoping you weren't going to ask. I mean, I really am grappling with, am I going to, you know what? I am going to start a Blue Sky account. I think because GrowthBusters the message needs to be where the people are. I don't think I'm going to stop my relationship yet with Facebook and Instagram. I've already ditched Twitter, but I feel like for the time being, we still need to be in those places, and they're certainly not getting any of my money. The GrowthBusters project is suffering from the ravages of their algorithms, but we'll keep trying. Am I going to cancel my Netflix subscription? I guess we'll find out. I don't know.
Well, let's check in on the next episode and see what each of us have done.
I guess we better.
I'm definitely contemplating canceling my Facebook account. I already do not have an Amazon Prime account, and I think I might order from Amazon twice a year. I think I could easily eliminate that entirely. Anyway, I challenge you, Dad. I challenge you. Let's do it. Now's the time. One thing that I will say is I did read the Substack that Matt Orsog wrote on February 27th. It's what alerted you to the movement here. Mm-hmm. And I think he takes a really economic, analytical lens to it.
Sure.
I thought it was really interesting. You talked about the stock market being overvalued by 69% and a correction is coming, and the shutdown could be the thing that actually pushes it over the edge. And if we can get this correction to happen in the stock market, that would actually eliminate a lot of wealth that the billionaire oligarchy has. You know, a lot of their wealth is represented in the stock market. It's not like they have all this cash in their bank account. They own all this stock that's worth a ridiculous amount of money. So I thought that that was interesting. But he also calls out that we would have to prevent the government from bailing out the banks again. And this is where it sounded really similar to the Occupy movement, right? Of, hey, we can't go back. We can't just bail out these big banks and the financial system every time. And I think he argues that this actually has a chance because we've been through this again and the people aren't going to be up for another bailout.
Besides sucking away some of the wealth of the oligarchs, unfortunately, a crash will take away a lot of wealth that is in the retirement savings accounts of a lot of everyday people. And, you know, that's the one thing I don't have a clear answer about. In fact, I really want to try to get Matt Orsog on the GrowthBusters podcast, and I think that might be the main subject we should talk about is how do we degrow the economy when there is this future well-being of the people in the current system that is so pegged on growth of your investment. You know, a lot of people have 401ks and IRAs invested in mutual funds and individual stocks, and they're counting on that to grow in order to beat inflation. You know, long term, we've got to find another way, but I don't know what that way is. No idea.
Well, I feel like that's a real boomer problem to have. I mean,
do you?
My husband and I talk about how we don't really expect to have a livable planet for retirement. Is it even worth saving money for retirement, or do we need to plan for an alternative future? Not to discount the situation that the retired or soon to be retired age group faces, but to me, it's first world problems.
Yeah. I mean, what good does it do you to have a growing 401k on a dead planet?
Yeah. I'll take care of you, Dad.
If you have to kill the planet to have a retirement nest egg, then why bother? So these are big questions and big problems. So
come live with me and we'll grow some vegetables and hope we survive.
Well, you're on the right track. So we encourage you to join this movement, and if you want to follow them and learn more, they advise that the number one place to look is Shutdown315.org. But you can also follow them on Blue Sky and Telegram. They do have a Substack account going, but they're not really publishing a lot of material there, so I wouldn't waste too much time going there. Follow them, and we'll talk more in the next episode. Not the next episode, but the episode after that, because we've already recorded the next episode. It's just waiting in the wings, because we slid this one in because we wanted to alert you to Shutdown 315 before 315. Well, what's next?
I think we're going to talk about our book club.
We're finally going to do it, aren't we?
Yeah, well, what kind of surfaced as just a random idea got some traction. We actually got some feedback that people were interested in a book club. The thought behind this is we'll let you know that we're planning to discuss this book in, a future episode. And so you're welcome and invited to read along and call in with your listener feedback or write us an email. What did you think of the book? And then when we discuss the book on a future episode, we can actually share that feedback and have more of a participatory kind of episode.
I've been reluctant to do this because I really struggle to find time to read books because I'm so busy being consulted by heads of state, being invited to speak to parliaments. But what pushed me over the edge, Stephanie, was when I got the call from Oprah. She said, Dave, you've got to do it. So, holding here in my hot little hands, the Serviceberry, which is our first book club selection.
Oh, it looks little. It looks very reasonable.
Yes, this looks like it should be sitting in your bathroom, so I think it's very readable, so I should be able to meet my obligation here with that. The Serviceberry, Abundance and Reciprocity in the Natural World by Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teaching of Plants. Everyone who's read that book absolutely loves it, and the reviews we've seen of this are pretty strong, so you will not regret acquiring this book somehow.
Yes, so go order it on Amazon. No, don't do that. Go buy it at your local bookstore. Do not get it from Amazon, please.
So start reading it, and probably in 2 episodes, we'll circle back and share what we think about it. And we would really love to include your thoughts. You can record a voice memo and email it to us. We would like to hear the words coming out of your mouth. What did you think? What did you learn? What do you want to highlight from this book? Or you can certainly send an email to us, podcast@growthbusters.org, or you can just leave us a voice message. You can call 719-402-1400 and leave a message, and we'll play that as part of our conversation about the book.
We'd love to hear from you. Even if we don't end up playing your specific voice memo on our episode, we really do appreciate getting your feedback and your thoughts.
So next up, while it's still kind of timely, I wanted to share this interesting Oscar acceptance speech. Kieran Culkin.
Kieran Culkin is Macaulay Culkin's brother, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I know. I have no idea what he was in.
Rising star. Because I've been a professional filmmaker all my life until I decided to become a GrowthBuster and starving documentary filmmaker, I almost always watch the Academy Awards, even though Billy Crystal isn't hosting them anymore.
And he was really excellent. Yeah, he was great.
Oh, he was so good. So I recorded it and haven't finished going through it, but I started hearing from people who emailed me about this because he said something that they thought noteworthy to us GrowthBusters. So here we go.
Please don't play the music because I want to tell a really quick story about Jazz. About a year ago, I was on a stage like this, and I very stupidly publicly said that I want a third kid from her because she said if I won the award, she would give me the kid. It turns out she said that because she didn't think I was going to win. But and people came up to her and were like, really annoying her. I think it got to her. But anyway. After the show, we're walking through a parking lot. She's holding the Emmy. We're trying to find our car. Emily, you were there, so you're a witness. And she goes, "Oh, God, I did say that. I guess I owe you a third kid." And I turned to her and I said, "Really, I want 4. And she turned to me. I swear to God this happened. It was just over a year ago. She said, "I will give you 4 when you win an Oscar." I held my hand out. She shook it. And I have not brought it up once until just now. You remember that, honey? You do? Okay. Then I just have this to say to you, Jazz. Love of my life, ye of little faith. No pressure. I love you. I'm really sorry I did this again. And let's get cracking on those kids. What do you say? I love you. I love you, Sisu and Booba. I love you, 52.
Now, that's really cute in a pronatalist world, and a world that's completely unaware of and oblivious to the fact that we're deep into ecological overshoot and that human overpopulation plays a key role in that.
Yeah, it's not an appropriate thing to say in today's world.
Now, I try not to diss people for doing that kind of thing because I really do believe he's got to be blissfully unaware. Either that or he is very uncaring about the other children of the world and the future generations. And I don't want to believe that. I really think he's just, I hate to say it, but clueless about ecological overshoot and human overpopulation. And if he were to become clued in, then if he wants more kids in the house, they could foster kids or adopt kids. But adding more kids to the 8 billion people that the planet cannot sustainably support. The planet cannot give beautiful lives to 8 billion people and their future generations.
And each of their 4 kids.
And their 4 kids, yeah. So kind of sad. Moving right along.
Listener feedback. What have we received in our inbox?
Just a few interesting things. One was Will Powers on Instagram. Hey, I just listened to your newest podcast episode, and I'm interested in participating in your upcoming book club. So, Will, it was you, not Oprah, that pushed me over.
We can't wait to hear your voice memo, Will.
We want to hear from you. And then we heard from Joe via email. Dave, do you still sell car stickers by donation that say stopped at 2? Do you remember those, Stephanie?
Oh, yeah. I think we should send one to Kieran Culkin while we're at it.
Before it's
Can we
too
find an address for him?
There's an idea. Why not? Yeah, I'm still sitting on a pretty good inventory of stickers. These are stickers that you can put in the back window of your car, and they form a more informed version of those stick figure families that you see on the backs of cars, and often with way too many stick figures. And we've got stopped at 0, stopped at 1, stopped at 2, and we have child free. I can't sell them to you because we would have to do sales tax, and we just don't have the staff to do the accounting and the reporting and collect sales tax and remit that. But if you are interested in one of these, send me an email, let me know which one you would like, and make a donation to GrowthBusters so that it's not a net negative to get the envelope and pay the postage, and maybe help us out a little bit with the podcast. That would be a nice part of it. But I'd like to see more of these stickers on the backs of more automobiles. I'd really like to see these stickers on the backs of bicycles, but it's challenging to put these on a bicycle.
Yeah, I don't think bicycles are really designed for bumper stickers.
Yeah.
All right, so to summarize, if you would like a sticker, donate and add a note or send an email along that indicates that you'd like one of those stickers and which sticker you want. And it sounds like you'll send it out.
I'll do it. It's easy to donate. Just head over to growthbusters.org and click on donate up in the, I think it's up in the upper right.
The last piece of listener feedback we have to share today is an email from Sam in Fort Collins, Colorado. He writes, "Hello from up north in the Fort Collins area. My name is Sam, and I've been listening to your podcast for about a year now. I also finally signed up for your discussion groups today and looking forward to investigating those more. I wanted to reach out and express my appreciation to both of you for the wonderful work you do. Your discussion strikes a very important tone for the subject matter, consistently sober-minded without falling prey to misanthropy and despair. In addition, I'm affiliated with the local chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. Our organization takes a big tent, non-sectarian approach, and I think there's quite a bit of potential for mutual aid and solidarity between our causes. For instance, our local is mustering to a land use hearing this very afternoon to give public comment against a plan to install 5 new methane-burning turbines at Rawhide Power Station. If you're interested, I would love to discuss opportunities for collaboration and get a better understanding of your local org, ideology, and efforts. It's my belief that we are living through weeks where decades happen, and that ever-increasing numbers of our fellow citizens are ready to engage in real conversations, sit with uncomfortable truths, and imagine the path out of our long collective nightmare. Another world is possible. Let's dream together."
Yeah, that's great to hear. It makes you feel good. Makes you feel like you're not just a voice lost in the wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah, although I'm not sure I agree that we don't fall prey to misanthropy and despair. But I'm glad that Sam feels otherwise.
Yeah, he must have missed an episode. But I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the GrowthBusters online community. That's the discussion group that Sam just joined.
And Dad, are you going to reach out to Sam and think about engaging with the DSA? Have you gotten involved with the DSA at all?
I have not, and I think it's worth exploring, and shame on me if I ignore an invitation to explore that.
Yeah, and I know that in the past you've done talks or presentations to various community groups or classrooms full of students. Maybe it would be a cool opportunity for you to give your spiel and see what they're up to. If you do that, report back and let us know.
Yeah. We do love hearing from you. As you could hear, we do share the most interesting feedback. So send an email to podcast@growthbusters.org. Write a comment at this episode's page on the GrowthBusters website, or leave a voice message at 719-402-1400.
Well, in addition to talking directly to us, we encourage you to talk to the people that you love and anyone, honestly, that needs to learn about limits to growth. So we'd love for you to share our podcast episodes with your mayor, your governor, your senator, prime minister, president, journalists, etc., etc.
And be sure to follow the podcast on your podcast app so you don't miss an episode.
Like my dad mentioned already, check out the GrowthBusters online community at groups.io.
And thanks to Jake Fader for writing and producing the GrowthBusters theme that you hear at the open and close of this podcast, and to Carlos Jones for singing it.
You can also always explore the issues we discuss at growthbusters.org.
And the homepage there is also where you can donate or get on our email list.
Thanks so much for listening, sharing, and doing your part. We've got a planet to save.
Some may dream to pave mountains and streams, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Some may just want more, but don't know what it's for, but not me. I'm a growth buster. Don't want a solution at the cost of pollution. They think bigger is better at the cost of the weather, but no, not us. We are the growth busters. Calling, 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 calling. Call the growth busters.